It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the full shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org. And I did that backwards.
How do you mean?
Aren't we supposed to say who we are and do this last?
No, I cut it in last.
Oh, okay.
That's why I do it, so make sure we don't forget it.
Okay.
So then I just edit it into the end.
Okay.
Do you want to do that again?
Yeah, I'll do it again. It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the full shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Mary Yerina.
And this is It's Movie Time.
It is time for the movies.
Now, Mary, I have to admit, I love Oscar Wilde. And there have been many stories about this fabulous poet, playwright.
Genius.
A genius. And I'll only say that next to Shakespeare, he's probably the most quoted or quotable writer in all of history. Who knows? Anyway, for those, if they're lucky enough, I'll have some quotes at the end of the show. But we have a movie called The Happy Prince. Now that sounds like a great time, Mary. Is it?
Well, The Happy Prince was a story that was written by Oscar Wilde, and the movie is narrated, if you will, by Oscar Wilde telling the story, first to his sons, and then to two young boys in Paris who somewhat serve as his surrogate sons.
Thank you.
And he, it's a beautiful story, and one that also is tragic. And I think part of this, using this story as the narration for the movie, I don't know whether it was intended to elicit sympathy for Oscar Wilde or tragedy for Oscar Wilde.
I know. That Happy Prince frames the whole story, but within it is, from my point of view, a pretty dark story of the last days of Oscar Wilde.
Very dark, and it picks up after he has been convicted of gross indecency.
Right.
And
basically for being gay.
For being gay.
In the 1890s, and that was
in Victorian England.
Right, and oh boy, in that you would go to jail immediately.
Right, and he had risen to be the toast of the town of London society because of his wit, because of his writing, because of his plays.
His importance of being earnest is a classic, still being done.
Still being done, and the Portrait of Dorian Gray.
Yes,
classic.
Yes,
well.
What a motif, and The Ideal Husband, and the Ballad of Reading Jail.
Yes.
Which was written right after his incarceration for 2 years.
Yes.
And while we've seen him as just the king, not the prince, the king of London.
Oh, the toast of London.
Oh, my Lord.
Everyone
Right,
wanted to invite him to every party and to be in his orbit.
Yes.
And his fall from grace was very sudden and devastating, not only to him, but to his wife and his children, which is portrayed in this film as well, which we should mention was written and produced by Rupert Everett, and he actually stars in the role of
Yes,
Oscar
he does.
Wilde.
Yes.
Gives an amazing performance.
Yes.
And I think he's really plumbed the depths of this character because he played this same role in a play called The Judas Kiss, for which he received many award nominations about 6 years ago. And so I think this is a subject matter that he's had a lot of passion for.
Yeah, I think that was a David Hare play, if I remember. But anyway, yes, he has really prepared himself for this role.
And physically, his transformation was just amazing in terms of, because if any of you've seen Rupert Everett, very tall, debonair, handsome man,
yes.
Even in his late 50s. And he really shows the effects of where Oscar Wilde had fallen.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the weight gain, the lack of self-care, and it's really an amazing physicality that he brings to the role itself.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, and Mary is even up. You're up better than I am. You really do your homework. But you probably noticed that around age 25, Rupert Everett came out.
Yes.
And his career was never the same.
No, it wasn't. And he also has remained very active, though, on the political side of things. It's not something where he came out and has tried to build a career. He accepted the consequences of what that might bring, but he's remained very active in LGBTQ
Yeah.
political circles and nonprofit organizations. And so for him to write and direct and star in this film, I think not just because of the fascinating life of Oscar Wilde, which I think people could examine for
Oh, my
centuries
Lord,
and never
yes.
run out of material. I think it had that personal call to him to want to advocate for bringing this to the screen. And it's, you and I think, commented earlier before we started rolling that, you know, it's a film that obviously is not made on a huge Hollywood budget. There's not a lot of bells and whistles in terms of CGI and special
Though
effects.
the latter part there, well, at least they're all over Europe, I think.
They are. They film it all over Europe. It seems to be a cast of friends,
Yeah.
all fine actors.
Right.
Colin Firth.
Yeah, for those of you who love Colin Firth, don't expect that much.
Yeah.
He plays one of Wilde's friends.
An actor on the
Yeah.
stage, had been in his
Yeah.
plays, remains a friend to him
Yes.
after his time in jail. But Emily Watson, Tom Wilkinson.
And don't expect a lot of Emily Watson.
And don't expect a lot of Tom Wilkinson or Anna Chancellor, but they're all from that same kind of group of British actors, and really came together to make a fascinating story and examination of basically what turned out to be about 3 years of Oscar Wilde's
Yeah,
life.
because he dies in 1900 of
Yes.
meningitis, I think, as I heard or read.
Yeah, and there were implications even referenced in the movie that potentially he died of syphilis,
Yes.
but there was never, it was kind of debunked by one line in the movie, and then in actuality, there's never been any proof of that.
And you know, in the movie, while of course I'm caught up in the whole aura of Oscar Wilde because I love his plays and his poetry, but in this you see the degeneration of a human being who is a supreme genius.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I came away from this was a real appreciation for his self-destructiveness.
Yes, I was trying to think of the word after I saw it, and I think hedonist would be the
Yeah,
best word.
yeah.
You know, he really was driven by satisfying his own
Yes.
sensual urges.
Right.
And in all aspects of life, not just his homosexual relationships, but he's imbibing in absinthe.
Yes.
He's taking cocaine. He's really, and then when he's out and about in Paris society, he still has a desire to be the center of attention.
Oh, and you know, he's so, you get an idea of fame and how easy fame is these days. He was famous even there, and people in the streets knew who he was.
Exactly.
The doctor at his deathbed is practically speechless when he finds that this is Oscar Wilde. I mean, he's had famous people he's tended to before,
Right.
and then when he's told it's Oscar Wilde, it almost stops.
Well, and one of the funnier moments occurs both at the same time as the death scene. Is when the priest is brought in to absolve and baptize Oscar Wilde, and it's played by Tom Wilkinson. And when he's asking about, well, who is this that I'm going to see?
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's right.
And Robbie Ross, who is
that's right.
one of the best friends that sticks with Oscar Wilde, when he says who it is. The expletive released by the priest about who he's about to absolve is pretty comical. But it's, you know, there were some lighthearted moments. It is a dark story. It's very tragic. I mean, you're watching a human being self-destruct after a fall from societal grace, if you will. The other thing that was very dark about it, and actually I thought resonated with where we are today in our divided nation, divided world, is the ease with which others were so willing to pass judgment. And there are several references made, one especially at the beginning of the film, and then one that's harkened back to a couple times when he's being transferred from one jail to another, about how easy it was for people to dismiss him as a human being and ridicule him and spit on him. And you know, and this was a man who was a literary genius, was, as we said, the toast of London society, and his fall from grace in those eyes was pretty stern. But I think it also, in an indirect way, knowing who wrote and directed the film and Rupert Everett, I think it was his way of also saying we haven't gotten any better today as a society in how we treat people who are different from us.
Well, yeah, Mary, I mean, you're so right. And consider in the 1890s, the attitude toward gays. My good Lord! I mean, so you imagine if we still have anti-gay movements out there. Can you imagine what it was like? And the minute
brutal.
Well, and Wilde was such a proud man that when the Marquis of Queensberry called him a sodomite, he took him right to court for slander.
Yes.
How foolish!
Well, and we both had commented that we had seen the play Gross Indecency that Catco produced a couple years ago here in Columbus, and it focuses on that very issue of his relationship with Lord Alfred Douglas, a young man of society who he fell in love with and couldn't let go of.
No.
But Bosie was his nickname. His family really did everything they could to try and separate their son from Oscar Wilde. And that whole trial aspect of it led to Oscar Wilde withdrawing his charges, but then the Douglas family pursued the gross indecency charges, which is what led to him being found guilty and thrown in prison for 2 years. Ironically, and again, it's a reflection of our society today, those with money, their son was not convicted of gross
Bosie
indecency.
was the Marquis of Queensberry's son.
Right, and he was not convicted of that and did not go to jail. And actually, after he's released, he does seek out Oscar again. And,
Oscar gives in to him again.
And Oscar gives in to him again. And it's like watching the moth to the flame, and like you're thinking it's going to be so self-destructive.
No, Oscar,
Don't do it.
Do not do that. And he says, "I'm my own Judas."
Yes.
He is responsible. But I always kind of smirk when I think about the Marquis of Queensberry and the boxing rules that he devised. And this is just not somebody you would want to go nose to nose with.
Right.
and Oscar does. I gotta love Oscar for it. But Oscar, please, you could go to jail. And that 2 years broke him.
Yeah,
as a human
it broke
being.
him as a human being. And there are some, this doesn't focus on his time in jail, but there are a few scenes where you see just the dehumanizing nature of Victorian era British prisons.
My. Oh.
And even though they're very short scenes, they're very telling scenes about how it broke Oscar Wilde's spirit. So there are a lot of scenes like that I think Rupert Everett chose that don't dominate the film, but really help set the frame for this character. And you're left to wonder, I think, is this a tragic homosexual story because of the era in which he lived, despite his genius that he couldn't overcome? Is it a story of addiction? Was he addicted to sex? Was he addicted to cocaine, absinthe, and other behaviors?
Mary, how about all of the above?
It could be all of the above.
I mean, this man was hyper. He was, and well aware of his own genius, and yet still, I mean, Mary, I'm going to indulge you just a little bit.
Okay.
If you want to research it, you can spend the whole afternoon reading his one line taken from his poems, from his plays, and so on. Here, I just took a sample of a couple for you. I think that God, in creating man, somewhat overestimated his ability.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much.
That's true.
And all women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his. Isn't that beautiful?
That's beautiful.
Now, here's the last stanza of the Ballad of Reading Gaol, or Reading Jail, as we should say. And all men kill the thing they love. By all let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword. Gee, Mary, that's beautiful. And of course, it's a commentary on himself.
Yes.
Killing himself and killing his friends. But finally, the pièce de résistance here is not Oscar Wilde, but Dorothy Parker. And here, Mary, is what Dorothy Parker says about Oscar Wilde.
Okay.
If, with the literate, I am impelled to try an epigram, I never seek to take the credit. We all assume that Oscar said it.
Well, the long reach of his legacy.
Oh my Lord, here we are.
And it's an amazing life, and I'm so glad that Rupert Everett was able to bring this story to the screen. It's probably more of a small art house film.
Oh, Mary, nobody's going to be wealthy on this.
But worth seeking out.
All right, Mary Yerina.
Yes, John DeSando.
And obviously, I mean, my review that I wrote is the longest one I've written since I can remember.
Wow.
So I must really like it. Anyway, Mary Yerina, the film is The Happy Prince. What grade would you award it?
I have to give this one an A.
Oh,
it's
wonderful.
So compelling.
Thank you. And just to keep us honest, I'm going to award it an A-.
And where does the minus come in?
All right. The minus comes in because I wanted more of his witticisms to be in the play. It was so dark, and there were so few moments where I heard his genius. And yet, you see, that's so false on my part. What makes me think that he'd be spouting these bon mots at this time in his life when he's barely alive? But that's where my minus comes. It's so dark, and it's so lacking in his brilliance.
I will give that to you.